I know I've been changed.
This unmarked stone in Flat Rock Slave Cemetery is the gravesite of Spencer Bryant, great-great-grandfather of actor and director Chris Tucker. Spencer Bryant was born a slave in 1864. By 1903, he was the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Flat Rock Methodist Church and one of the prominent leaders who would build the foundation and institutions of the Flat Rock community.
He was a local minister. They called them local preachers, you know, when they didn't travel. He wasn't a traveling minister, but he was a local minister who directed services at the Flat Rock Flat Rock Methodist Church at that time. And he lived just down the road from us, I guess about a quarter of a mile.
I remember Mr. Spencer Bryant because he was the minister of the church when I was a teenager, young girl rather. And he was a very important person in the community because, he had a big two-story house and what you call a ballpark, and on holidays he would have big picnics and sell refreshments, and teams would come from other communities and play ball. We had a lot of respect for Mr. Spencer Bryant. You know, he was like a father to the whole community.
The angels in heaven.
My father, he really loved his community, and he wanted to keep people in the community. He bought the first 40 acres in 1926, and that I was only 4 years old at that time. And I don't know how he came up with the money at that time, but.
While the country was in the throes of the Great Depression, T.A. Bryant Sr. became one of the first African-American landowners in Flat Rock. It was from one of the first original white settlers, John South, that he purchased his first 40 acres, who then began selling land to family and other members of the community.
Dad, after renting from Mr. South this 40 acres of land, had a chance to buy it. There was a time when he wouldn't sell land to darkies, as he called them.
He was a good farmer because he wanted to be a good one. You know, he read about how you do things and he did it that way, and he raised a lot of, we didn't know what it was to not have food. We'd go out in the yard and in the summertime, this time of year, you had strawberries on the terrace out there in the field. You had dewberries on one of the terraces on the field. And you had peaches and apples and plums. Everything was getting ripe, you know, by June, July. You had watermelons in July, you know, cantaloupes. You always had food. I did a lot of things that boys do. I plowed some, hoed cotton. I told, the fertilizer and the cotton seeds when it was planting. I dropped all the corn from my daddy's to my granddaddy's.
I never picked 100 pounds. He would always challenge us to try to pick 100 pounds a day. And the highest I ever got were 83 pounds. I picked 50 in the morning, but I couldn't get to 50 in the afternoon.
T.A. eventually rose to become a Master Mason, earning the title of Wishful Master, one of the highest positions in the 30 to 40 years of the local Masonic Lodge. By now, the small, struggling community of African-American farmers and sharecroppers in Flat Rock had built a church, a school, a Masonic Lodge, and eventually a small country store owned by Joe Kelly. Ms. Williams was 5 years old then.
My granddaddy had this stall. He
He sold kerosene. He even somebody would deliver him chunks of ice, and he would pick the ice and sell people's 15-cent worth of ice. That was the only store. Grandmother would make good old ice cream and sell to anybody because they had a ball field down there in those woods back on this area down here. Everybody would come to the ball game, would stop at my granddaddy's store for snacks or whatever. So he didn't do bad having that little country store there.
Yes, Mr. Kelly had this candy store in his yard, and we would walk down. What's that street that he come down the street, and we turn in there to go to the school. It was a little shortcut, and we'd always come back in the afternoon, stop at his store and get us a sucker of some kind of candy that he was selling. My grandfather, Elliot Lyons, he purchased a property from Mr. South. It was 50 acres of land, and it had 2 small houses on it. And we lived there after my grandparents died. We didn't have no problem until after my grandparents died. We lived there for a while, and then they wanted, I don't know who it was, trying to get her to sell the property, and she didn't want to sell. One Sunday night we was coming from church, somebody burned us out. My aunt and my brother was there, because the rest of us was at church. It was on a Sunday night. So we left the property. It had to be, we burned out.